Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to my van down by the Snake River. Well, who am I, and why should you care? Well, I am a former YouTuber, and like you, I'm a survivor of the EMP attack. And the date today is December 2nd, EMP year 2, or 2. So this is actually 12/2/2. And so, why am I here? Well, I was chosen because I'm an articulate storyteller. And since you're logged in here, you understand from the previous announcers kind of where we're at and how we got the internet back up. And, and you should also know that I, as well as the previous commentators, are chosen by and represent the Idaho 3% militia. And I really have to give a nod to those boys. When I bugged out from Oregon, and after my brief and bloody encounters in eastern Oregon, made it across the river into what was left of the United States, what is now known as the New Republic of the United States, or the Republic of America is what a lot of people are calling this. But for short, we just call it the New Republic. So what's left of the United States we call the New Republic. Now, if you're getting this news for the first time, and one of the reasons they chose me is because I'm a storyteller. And I was known for being a storyteller before all of this. And, leave it up to the other guys to give you the news. I'm going to tell you how we got here, because there's a lot of disinformation out there. For almost 2 years now, we've been receiving our news. For a year and a half, we've been receiving our news from notes posted up at crossroads, signs painted over with news blips about what is going on, with word of mouth and rumor and innuendo. And I think the previous commentators before this did a really good job of explaining to you where we are now, how the nerds on our side got the internet back up and running. And they're leaving some of the more difficult stories to me, because I have some communication skills that are probably better than some of them. And they wanted to script something for me, and I just told them, look, before all this, I just told stories, I winged it. And so, we did have a timeline laid out so that we were all on the same page, and that I had all the information, because like many of you, I was only getting part of the information. So this is the story of how we got here and what has happened over the last 18 months. So many of you will remember the moments leading up to the EMP, and everything that's happened since the EMP is, a blackout for most everyone. And for those of us here in Idaho and in the 3%, we have most of the information. Some of the world and global information is still unknown to us. What's happening in the rest of the world. We are hearing some news now that the internet is kind of back up. It's up in bits and pieces. And nerds around the world are working to get it back up and running as best that we can. So, there's information from some places, and other places there's no information at all. And I'm going to do my best to lay out the storyline for you of how we survived, how we got here, and the struggles that we still face as we rebuild and try to get along with our neighbors. So, my former home of Oregon, I think most everyone knows this, because this is kind of the central the central ground zero. The West Coast was the ground zero in what we all know now as the Second Civil War. And we do have a ceasefire right now. And the line along the ridge of the Cascade Mountains, everything east of the Cascade Mountains in Washington and Oregon, is part of the New Republic and part of the Idaho Territory. Now, the areas west of the mountains, including all of the west coast from Canada to Mexico, is now known as New California. They did secede from the Union. They did get help from communist China. And the red tank story, that I was one of the conspiracy nuts who said there were red star tanks down in Mexico. Well, that was all real. There were definitely tanks down in Mexico. And when they rolled up the Pacific Coastal Trail, the mountain trail, when they took that ridge from the south and met up with Canadian communists, let's just say it like it is, we still have to deal with Canada. Yeah, we're still going to have to deal with Canada and what they did. But right now, we're just trying to bury the hatchet so we can bury the dead, so we can get our roads and our bridges rebuilt, get our people fed, and get back on the track to civilization. I think everyone's ready for peace, but it remains to be seen whether we can achieve peace. But there's still a demilitarized zone and a truce line that's holding along the Cascades. So pretty much when the trees turn from fir to pine, on the fir side, it's communism. And on the pine side, it's what's left of the United States, what we call the New Republic. So, how did we get here? Leading up to the EMP, we were polarized. We were a polarized nation. There were those that wanted to make America great again, and there were those that wanted to destroy America. Those that believed in the chant that you would hear on the streets in protests. No borders, no wall, no USA at all. Those voices were stronger than any of us thought, and they had foreign help. And the day the tanks rolled up from the south, the day that the federal buildings were taken over by state and local police working with the deep state in the Pacific Northwest, I had no idea that the entire government of the state of Oregon, the state of California, and the state of Washington, at its highest level, had already made deals with the communist Chinese. They were trading natural resources that we have in abundance in the West Coast, off to China. They were giving them mineral rights, water rights. There's so much water up there in those mountains, and that's what they wanted. And they were willing to help the state of Oregon, the state of Washington, and the state of California secede from the Union. So one of the first things that was a red flag for me and caused me to bug out really ahead of the tanks was the gun grab. That literally 3 days before the tanks rolled out, they hit everybody's home who was on record in Oregon with a concealed handgun license. Boy, did I look back on that, and I was so glad I never got a concealed handgun license. I got the forms, everything. I studied it and did it. My son-in-law I just never got around to it. I was just too busy. I just didn't go anywhere that much. I open carried when I needed to carry. I car carried, And so I didn't feel like I needed a concealed handgun license. I never went down to Portland. And I just never got it. But those that had it, they got hit hard. Honestly, those were the first shots in the Civil War. And they happened, as far as I can tell, because we didn't have long before the EMP. And it's interesting that, they were able, whenever we would think of EMPs before all this, we would think about how there would be this explosion way up in the stratosphere, and it would black out the entire United States. But what we didn't realize is that the elevation at which point the EMP is detonated, it denotes the scope or coverage of the EMP. So if the EMP is low enough, it'll only affect a certain area. So they were able to target just areas of resistance, the red areas. So the red states and the red regions got EMP'd very surgically by China. And the thing is that this was done with a combination of some weapon that we still don't understand or comprehend how they did it, but it was believed to be satellite-based, and others were detonated with drones. They were able to fly drones in with small devices, blow them up closer to the surface, and EMP, and take out electronic devices and the power grid in just areas. And I, as a student of history, it will go down as one of the biggest blindsides. That really nobody in Trump's government saw it coming. Not to the degree. They knew something was up. They were making preparations, but like so many powerful men and or structures or entities or institutions that become prideful and arrogant, they underestimated their opponents. They had no idea that Kate Brown was working in conjunction with communist Red China, and that these governors of these blue states had sold their mineral rights and water rights away to China. And so they had the power of the Chinese military, and they had been secretly training shock troops to go in and seize these weapons. And when that happened, hundreds of people were killed. Hundreds of innocent people were murdered and their weapons seized. Those that fought back, those that didn't, were taken away to the FEMA camp. What I would have called the FEMA camp back in the day, but it's communist re-education camps. Most of them were in prisons that had been built by private industry and had not been yet filled. And some of them also were built into prisons that had been, they released the people. The communists just released the people. They just loosened society, all the criminals. And they put other people into these either vacant prisons or prisons that were being repurposed for re-education camps. And this happened so suddenly, and then the tanks. And I don't know about you, but I had just gotten news of open warfare, bombs being dropped, missiles being fired, Air Force being scrambled, National Guard in rebellion, people, some unknown entities in black SUVs, all dressed in black, trying to take over all of our armories, all of our National Guard armories, and just seize them. And I mean, still, we don't know who those people were, what they were associated with, but it makes me think of my MK Ultra trainer story. I mean, didn't she say it was going to go down like this? So there's a lot to tell and a short time to tell it. And I'm going to let the mic go now because there's lots of things that need to be said. And to the boys and the 3%ers that are holding the lines, and those of you who may be deeper in it than anyone knows, I have one last thing to say to you. Should I get this right? The rooster crows at midnight. I repeat, the rooster crows at midnight. Do not take the candy from the cookie jar. I repeat, do not take the candy from the cookie jar. Alpha, Tango, Foxtrot, sorry. Okay, yeah, they're telling me I got that right. All right. Till the next time, God save our new republic.